There's a lot of bad things going on in the industry right now. Microsoft have jettisoned multiple studios, and that's a story we'll be diving into tomorrow. Today, though, we have a similar tale from Take-Two. That's the Grand Theft Auto publisher, right? They've also killed studios. In one case, it's an award-winning studio whose latest game has outwardly appeared to be a roaring success on all fronts, and the other studio is the result of a hell of a dramatic story that I'll be covering today. It's the studio who have been working on Kerbal Space Program 2, and what's happened to them is why the Kerbal Space Program 2 Steam review scores look like this. Yeah, kind of dramatic. So ultimately, you can launch a bad game in early access and they will fire everybody before they're allowed to finish it. Or you can make a good game, hell, even an amazing game, one that gets over 1 million players, and they'll still fire you regardless. Now, today's video is made possible with the help of our members over at Bellular.games. Over there, they get access to our other publication, Loading Screen, in their mailbox daily, all of our content, ad-free, videos up and live as soon as they are made, and our members' Discord. And, well, look, really, it makes a serious impact. I think you can understand how things are with AdSense, unpredictability, and all of that. My number one personal KPI is job security good. So you guys are making a serious impact. Thank you for that. With that said, on with the show. To kick it off then, we're going to talk about how making brilliant games that seem to do well just is not going to save you. So, there has been confirmation of 2 closures via Bloomberg. Jason Schreier reported that Take-Two have informed Roll7, who have done games like Ollie Ollie World and Rollerdrome. I mean, you've probably seen Rollerdrome. It's pretty much been all over Steam, Game Pass, the like. And then Intercept, who are the people who've been working on Kerbal Space Program 2, that they've both been shuttered as a part of cuts to Take-Two's private division label, one of the publishers that exists under Take-Two. And by the way, this is how Private Division describe themselves. I'll just read from their website. Private Division is a developer-focused publisher that empowers studios to develop games that they're passionate about creating while providing the support that they will need to make their titles critically and commercially successful on a global scale. And the setup, the vibe had been that this was the more experimental division of Take-Two. They had published some really good stuff in the past, like, say, The Outer Worlds, right? And also, most recently, No Rest for the Wicked, which I've got to say I am extremely impressed by, having actually played it for a bit now. Per GameIndustry.biz, the vast majority of the label's teams in Seattle, New York, Las Vegas, and Munich have been let go. And this is because the whole premise of a publisher making kind of meaningful experimental titles that are perhaps then subsidized by some of the most profitable games in the industry, hello Grand Theft Auto Online, that is actually not something that Take-Two really seemed to care about when push came to shove. So let's take a look at these 2 studios and basically the massive shit show that's going on here. In 2021, Take-Two acquired Roll7 via Private Division. Great. Mergers and acquisitions, they always seem to be ending well in the industry. Now, at that point, they'd been making games for 12 years. They were one of the UK's most recognized game developers. They're just doing a really good job. And they'd essentially built their studio from making educational games for hire to making stuff like the Ollie Ollie series, Not a Hero, Laser League, and of course Rollerdrome, which is awesome. Now, this is of course all going on in an era where people are lamenting the loss of a Tony Hawk, right, as an example. And when recently people have been saying that pitches for another Tony Hawk Pro Skater remaster, that those were actually put forward by Vicarious Visions to Activision, and Activision said no, Call of Duty. So in a world where that's the sort of thing that we want, yeah, Roll7 were kind of doing that with the likes of Rollerdrome, right? People were flocking to that game via purchases and via subscriptions because they actually surpassed 1 million players. 1 million! I've got to assume that, like, 1 million players is probably a recipe for financial viability. We'll have to see. I mean, hell, Rollerdrome even got them a BAFTA. Not that that's been particularly useful, because now, 3 years and 2 games after the acquisition, they are gone, and the 60-plus developers are all, well, thankfully, they're going to receive severance, which is good, because they've been laid off, which is less good. Now, they basically had no idea. Like, it's very clear they did not know that this closure was coming. They were talking to Eurogamer in 2023 and actually teasing that they had at least one project to reveal this year, and that they had several in development. So clearly, right, funding had been secured for those. They had plans. and evidently the minds changed at the corporate level, and now they don't exist anymore. So they really do represent the worst way that like mergers and acquisitions can go in our industry, right? They were kind of pressured into being acquired in order to thrive in an industry that is very challenging if you don't have some sort of well-moneyed backer. So, you can sort of understand that. This is what they said at the time, quote, "We were finding it harder and harder to hire because so many other places were being acquired. So now they've got private healthcare and dental and all these things, which for us are super hard to offer as an independent. So essentially, they decided to be acquired because it meant more resources, and they felt that they needed those resources to stay competitive. Of course, if you're where they are in the UK, then that is actually a sort of a game hub where there will be a decent amount of competition. Or should I say, would have been back when they got acquired. In case you haven't realized, the game's jobs market has changed a little bit over the last 5 years. So this acquisition that was meant to equal security and stability has, of course, not really worked out. Take-Two don't want them, and they're shuttering them because it's probably going to be cheaper to pay everybody severance than to try and pay the costs of maybe selling the studio to someone else or just releasing it. So this really is just a case of publisher apathy. This is a studio that was award-winning, that was like consistently putting out very good content, stuff like with Rollerdrome that does appear to have been financially successful, but just not enough for Take-Two to give a shit. And our other story, it is grim, but it's very, very different. It's a story of greed and avarice. Okay, so the Intercept. We actually knew about their closure a bit earlier than with Roll 7. On the 28th of June 2024, 70 people are going to be let go by the company, and we know this because it appeared on Seattle's Warn page for corporate layoffs. We can see here, Take-Two, Seattle, 70 people going, and that pretty much matches this studio near perfectly. Now, the thing with the Intercept is, they were set up specifically by Take-Two to work under Private Division to make Kerbal Space Program 2 and then also some sort of secret in-development title. Now, at the best estimates people had, they were around 70 staff, so a lot of this stuff did fit. Now, when questioned about all of this, Take-Two were obviously playing rather coy because they responded to game developers' questions about the scopes of layoffs within Private Division by just saying, on April 17th, Private Division successfully launched No Rest for the Wicked. So, go, look at that, look at No Rest for the Wicked. The label continues to make updates to Kerbal Space Program 2 and plans to release Weta Workshop Studios titles like Tales of the Shire, The Lord of the Rings game in the second half of 2024. Now, when they were pushed again on what's going on with Intercept games, they said they had nothing further to note. Rather suspicious. So the game is still going to get updates, they say, and considering that it's an early access title, you really would hope. Still though, it is kind of shocking because on, say, April 25th, the Intercept just released a pretty hefty development post. Went through all the plans that they're working on. Yeah, it was stuff that had no clear release date, but clearly they were still working in the game. So who knows where that's going to go, because at the end of June, they're pretty much all going to be gone. All of this, again, because Take-Two don't care about the developers of Kerbal Space Program. And again, there's an entire story behind all of this about basically all of the bullshit that Take-Two pulled when they went to form the Intercept and do the whole Kerbal Space Program 2 thing. It is a very, very, very bizarre story. One we've talked about before, though. Of course, the launch of Kerbal Space Program 2 was a total shit show. It just had all the problems you could expect, right? Performance problems, and you could say the sort of volume of features. It was very, very early access. It was very bare bones. Really, just go play Kerbal 1. That was essentially the rub with it. Initially, I had talked about this in the first recording of this video, but to be honest with you, the review scores are now so much more worse. I believe the recent ones are at 14%. There's a lot of anger there because, yes, I mean, the main sort of victims of this are obviously the people who worked in this game, but for all of the fans, well, Take-Two essentially sold them a vision of Kerbal 2, early access, big roadmap, and in fact, that they've been working on updates and that sort of thing. So yes, the devs have had a obviously terrible time, but it's also true that the customers, the reason why they got a half-baked game is because Take-Two did not give the development studio time. Take-Two then happily took the money of those customers, ostensibly so that a full Kerbal 2 could be funded, and that's. Well, it doesn't really look like it's happening. I mean, Kerbal 2 isn't officially cancelled, and they have said it'll still get updates, but there certainly are questions around how. Anyway, with that, back to Past Me. The Intercept were kind of set up to fail here. Almost every good game released last year had some sort of lesson to teach about talented devs being retained or respected in order to just have a game. I mean, we have so many stories of that. But with Kerbal Space Program 2, Take-Two did the complete opposite. And again, as a reminder here, it is not being made by the same developers. Kerbal 2, made by the Intercept. Kerbal 1, that's made by a group called Squad. And the original creator of it, Philippe, well, he actually walked away in May of 2016, and now he's got his own game. It's called Kit Hack Model Club. It's very much in the spirit of Kerbal 2. It's basically making, like, vehicles, but as if you're sort of doing it in your garage as a bit of a hobby project. I think it's really cool. Anyway, so he's currently working on that. But then him leaving, that was followed by 8 more developers from that team in October of 2016. Then 2017, Take-Two Interactive purchased the rights to Kerbal Space Program, and then they took the remaining developers at Squad. In 2019, they announced Kerbal 2 with the new developers, Star Theory Games, who were formerly Uber Entertainment. If you remember a game called Monday Night Combat, they did that. Now, in 2020, this project was pulled from Star Theory, and it was brought in-house at Take-Two, who founded a new internal studio, Intercept, to make the game. And of course, that's the studio that does appear to be rather dead right now. Rather dead, June 20, whatever it is. Now, as a part of all of this, they offered jobs to everybody at Star Theory Games to just sort of jump ship and continue working on the title. They did this, though, after they tried to buy the studio. They offered terms that the owners of the studio did not find acceptable, so they basically just tried to then poach their team. 30 people took up the offer, which ultimately was to keep their jobs, and the remaining staff over at Star Theory, they were left scrambling to find their next piece of work. Of course, when the pandemic hit, that studio was forced to close because of a lack of work. Then the launch of Kerbal 2 was delayed until the end of 2020, and then it went into fiscal year 2021, then autumn 21, then at some point in 22, and then finally it came out in early 23. Yeah, they were really edging the fans in that one. Unfortunately, though, it all led to a humongous disappointment because it was the old shrinkflation special of being a worse game with fewer features and less content, but of course, at a higher price, which, a tremendous value. But when you take a look at all of this, right, the sheer chaos going around the development of this game, like, did it ever have a chance to succeed? What the hell was going on? I think ultimately Kerbal Space Program is the important thing for Take-Two. They want the brand, not necessarily the game or the developers who make the game. And that's why they're perfectly happy to say that updates will continue, while somehow also ignoring the fact that they've fired the developers who are making it. What we have: Roll 7, that's apathy. Everything about Kerbal Space Program is avarice. The industry is very tiresome. Look, this story happened last week. It's not really being talked about much, and I just think people need to know. And I guess with Kerbal Space Program being involved, like, it's an obvious I suppose. And Rollerdrome. I mean, how many times have you seen that on Steam, on Game Pass, whatever? I mean, I see the art for that game all over the place, and just kaput, devs are gone. So, I would use stronger words if we were not on this platform. Thank you for watching. Of course, if you want to support the show, be sure to support today's sponsor. With that said, I'll see you next time.